Hello Year 8. So in today's lesson we're going to look at photosynthesis as a process and what happens to the products of photosynthesis. So you need to be able to, by the end of the session, recall the formula, state what the substrates, which is the reactants if you like, for photosynthesis are and where they come from, explain what can happen to the products of photosynthesis, what they can be used for, maybe then start thinking about things that might affect the rate of photosynthesis, and possibly start making a link between photosynthesis and food chains and respiration as well. But we'll really be focusing on these top ones probably in today's session. So first activity I'd like you to do is think about these questions. All right, give yourself 3 or 4 minutes, just pause the video here and then write some answers maybe in the back of your book, and we'll come back to them and you can check your answers at the end of the lesson. Another question here for you to have a think about as well. So now you've had a think. Okay, we're going to work through the next few slides. I'll talk you through some of the ideas, and then there are some tasks on the later slide for you to work on. Okay, so key thing: photosynthesis is a chemical reaction, and it's occurring in the chloroplasts in the leaves, so mainly in those palisade mesophyll cells at the top, near the top of the leaf, where there's most light going to fall on them. Okay, and the key thing is light energy is being absorbed by the chlorophyll. So that chlorophyll is the pigment, is a colour that's able to absorb certain colours of light. You want to think about your physics, about what light it can absorb and what light it can't absorb. And because it's taking in energy to make the reaction occur, if you remember your chemistry, it's an endothermic reaction. Okay, remember, I think you've done this in chemistry, you've done exothermic and endothermic reactions. So a match burning is exothermic, it's giving out heat energy, and energy where you have to take energy in is an endothermic reaction. Okay, and that energy is being used to produce glucose and oxygen whilst using carbon dioxide and water. So the formula is carbon dioxide and water are converted via chemical reactions into glucose and oxygen. Okay, so we've got light energy being absorbed by the chlorophyll, and that's being used to drive this reaction here to produce this molecule called glucose, which is sugar, and oxygen, which is technically a waste product of this reaction. So the formula is carbon dioxide, CO2, and H2O, and the formula for glucose is C6H12O6. Okay, so in other words, it's a molecule that contains 6 atoms of carbon, 12 atoms of hydrogen, and 6 atoms of oxygen, all bonded together. So the elements here are being rearranged and rebonded to make this more complex molecule, and often it's drawn as a little hexagon. Okay, because it's a ring structure that's actually almost in the shape of a hexagon. Okay, and then oxygen is given off, and to make it all balance up, we need 6 carbon dioxide molecules and 6 water molecules, and you get 1 molecule of glucose and 6 molecules of oxygen as a waste product, and that's how it balances up if you remember your chemistry. Okay, so that is the formula. You have to know it, you have to learn it. You might notice what this formula might be similar to if you think about another formula you've done in biology. Okay, but maybe if you flip the arrows around, what would happen? Notice here about some colours I've used, talking about the energy coming in from the sun. The sun's light is white light, which is a mixture of all light, but if you look at what I've written but here I've used red and blue only, and I've made the chlorophyll green. I want to think about what that is. So let's think about, well, where's all this stuff coming from? Where's this stuff going to go to? So the reactants, remember, are carbon dioxide and water. Okay, so the carbon dioxide is coming from the air, and that is going in through the stomata. Okay, and then the water is coming up from the soil, and you've just done a whole load of work on transpiration, so water being absorbed by those root hairs by that process called osmosis, and then being transported through the stem in the xylem up to the leaf, okay, and that water is being absorbed into the cells, and some of that water is being used for photosynthesis, although obviously lots and lots of it is lost through the leaf through transpiration, but some of it is needed for photosynthesis, okay. And the carbon dioxide is going in through the stomata, through those holes usually in the bottom of the leaf, the pores in the bottom of the leaf, and being used. Okay. The products then, glucose and oxygen. Okay. So we need to think about, well, what happens to those products? Okay. So, well, a lot of the oxygen will go out into the air. Okay. But some of it will also be used in respiration of the plant. But during a sunny day, actually the rate of photosynthesis is much faster than the rate at which the plant is respiring. Remember, all living things do respiration, which is that chemical reaction to release energy from food. Photosynthesis takes in energy to make food. They're the opposites of each other. But so quite a lot of oxygen will actually be given off to the air, but some of it will be used in respiration as well. And the glucose is going to be used by the plant in some way. So, how does the plant use glucose? Well, as I've already mentioned, some of it's going to be respired to release the energy for the plant to use. So, lots of reactions in the plant require energy, and therefore you have to release energy from food. So, so making new cells, for example, growing, making new other molecules actually also requires energy. You can take the glucose, notice I've drawn a little hexagon here, and you can join it together to make a storage molecule, which is starch. So if you think about things like potatoes, okay, they have lots and lots of starch in them because the plant makes loads of glucose in its leaves. It then translocates them in the phloem down to the roots and stores them away as starch. If you think about wheat, the seeds that we grind up to make flour, they store starch in their seeds as an energy store, and then obviously we're using it to make our bread and things like that, but actually it's an energy store for the seeds to be able to grow a new plant. Okay. Some of it will be combined with other minerals from the soil, which we'll talk about in a moment, to make things like proteins. So you can't grow without proteins, so you can't just use carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, which is what glucose is made of. You need other minerals, other elements to make proteins, so they come from the soil as well. Some of it will be used to make cell walls. Okay, so cellulose is actually it's made of just glucose joined together, but in a slightly different way, and it makes the cell walls, and that's so growth. All of these things will, by the way, need energy to work. So energy released from respiration will also be used to make these molecules here. It can be converted into fats and oils. If you've eaten an avocado, for example, avocados have lots and lots of fat in them. Okay, and lots of seeds store oil in them as well, and you need fats to make cell membranes, so it'll be converted into that. It might be converted into other sugars like fructose. So think about like strawberries and apples and bananas and things like that. There's sugar in lots of those fruits, and berries like blackberries and all that sort of things might be fructose. And if you've ever seen like shampoos called Laboratoire Garnier Fructis shampoo or something like that, it's fruit sugars they're talking about. Okay, so you need to know about all these things. So what the plant is going to be doing with that glucose. It doesn't keep it as glucose. Okay, glucose is quite reactive and it's also very soluble, and so if you want to store it away you need to make it insoluble. You can't build big things just from glucose, so we make proteins for making things like enzymes and hormones and structural things for plants, cellulose for the cell walls, so all different things can be used to make those products. So let's have a little overview of what's going on. So remember, photosynthesis is this chemical reaction. Now there's a couple of terms here, organic and inorganic compounds. So we're using the energy to make organic compounds. Organic compounds are big complex compounds like sugar and all the other molecules we've talked about that contain carbon, but not carbon dioxide. Okay, and inorganic compounds are things like oxygen, which is actually a waste product of photosynthesis, but water and carbon dioxide. So don't worry about that too much, but that's the idea. So all the molecules you are made up of are all organic molecules mainly. So all the fat and protein and carbohydrates in you are all organic molecules, and similarly in plants. Okay, so the light energy is being transferred to chemical potential energy. So in our chloroplast, here's our reaction: carbon dioxide, water goes to glucose and oxygen. The carbon dioxide is coming from the air via the stomata. The water is being moved up from the soil in the xylem. The oxygen is being released via the stomata. The glucose is being converted directly into starch or lipids or cellulose, because all they contain is just carbon, hydrogen, oxygen as well, so they're just being rearranged to make these molecules. Some of the glucose being respired using oxygen as well. Okay. Some of the glucose being converted into proteins, also into DNA, your genetic material, and something called RNA and hormones. Okay, and they have to use ions like nitrates to do this, also magnesium, which you need to make chlorophyll, and they're absorbed from the soil. Don't worry about this process here, but it's called active transport. So they're being absorbed from the soil. So we need to make extra elements to make these molecules here, okay, and they will have come from the soil. Okay, so the energy has to be absorbed to make photosynthetic reactions occur, so it's endothermic. Okay, so you had loads of information now. You might want to flip back, rewind the video a bit and have another look, or look through the slides again. What I want you to do is to make your own one-page summary about photosynthesis and have a go at completing the worksheet, uses of glucose. And then have another go at the questions from the beginning of the lesson, which are on the next slides, and see whether you're correct. Okay, you're probably going to need about 20 minutes on this at least. So this may well take you into next lesson. I'll give you time to do that. All right. And then there are some questions at the end that you can also have a go at. So you can pause the video here, get on with this work. Obviously you can rewind the video, have another look. All right. Read pages in your textbook as well if they think they're going to be useful. Okay. Right. Let's have a look at these questions then. So, where do plants get their energy from? Did you get the correct answer? Okay, did you get light energy from the sun? What do plants need to take from the soil in order to grow? Choose from below. Hopefully you got water and minerals as two answers. Okay. What do plants take from the air to grow? Hopefully you just got carbon dioxide. They might need to take some oxygen from the air at night to do respiration. Okay, because there's no photosynthesis going on at night, but they're still doing respiration. So they might need to take some oxygen, but during the day they're probably only going to need to take carbon dioxide from the air, because then they'll get enough oxygen just from photosynthesis releasing oxygen to use in any respiration that's going on. And then what do plants make when they photosynthesize? They produce glucose, okay, which is a store of energy, and they produce oxygen, which is a waste product. Okay, but they might use some of it in respiration. And which of the statements is best describes photosynthesis? Is statement B. Carbon dioxide and water react together to form glucose and oxygen using light energy. Okay, this is incorrect, because this would be sort of respiration, but then it wouldn't be correct to be talking about absorbing energy. Light is used to produce energy for the plant in the form of sugar. That's just not really correct at all. Yes, they do make sugar, but it's not light producing energy. Light is a source of energy that's then stored in the bond in the chemical of sugar. Okay, carbon dioxide and water is converted into oxygen and glucose, makes it sound like we're changing the elements here to make something new, and that's not really correct. So the B is the better answer. Okay. Right, last little thing for you to think about. So we talked about this at the beginning of the lesson. Plants are green, so what colours are they likely to absorb, and what colours can't they absorb? And what factors might affect the rate at which a plant can photosynthesize, sorry, spelling mistake there, and therefore grow? Okay, have a think, see what you can come up with, and we'll maybe talk about that in our next lessons. All right, thank you.